Hey, welcome back to 30 days of seven-figure mindset building, right? We're trying to help you here, right? My name is Josh with So Strategic. We're trying to help you here develop a seven-figure mindset to actually reach a million or more in revenue. Now, 91% of businesses never reach the $1 million threshold when they're building, which is so mind-boggling to me. I was talking with my tax strategist. I mean, literally getting off that call, hopping onto this to record this real quick. And we were talking about this concept. And I said, I'm not going to say his name, but I was saying, Mr. Tax Strategist, it's mind boggling to me that 91% of businesses never reach $1 million. Like, that's why we created this business. And he said, it's not that uncommon. And it's very common to see 770, 850, 920, or, 500, 350. So why don't they actually do it? And he and I were talking about this for a little while. And one thing really popped in my head. And we talk about the systems, we talk about all the different stuff, and we're going to talk about those over the next 30 days. I'm going to give you some practicals on some specific systems you can be building, the way that you can approach your sales and marketing, some methodologies, but we're going to get into the weeds on some of those things as well. Because I think processes, as I said on the last video, you will elevate to the level of your processes, and you will also fall to the level of your processes. But something struck me as I was thinking about this today. And it's this concept of belief, right? I think this concept of belief is one of the most underrated things that you need to have in place to be able to actually have a chance at success when building a business. And what do I mean by belief? You might be wondering that. I'm trying to channel my inner Deion Sanders, right? If any of you are football fans, Deion, he always talks about, you got to believe, you got to believe, you got to believe. You have to believe. First off, you got to believe in who you are. Now, so often we can disqualify ourselves based on where we've been, what we've done, mistakes we've made, right? We let them define us in a negative way. But the people that are really successful and the people that break $1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, multi-tens of millions and nine-figure businesses, they realize that they've maybe made mistakes before. They've messed up. They've done the wrong thing at times, but they always use those experiences to actually solidify the belief in who they can become. And so if you can get that, right, if you can embrace that growth mindset, and I'll say that again, growth mindset, you need to think about that. If you're not growing, you're dying. Okay, so you got to constantly be growing. We're going to talk more about how you can be growing either in a little bit later in this video, or maybe I'll save that for a different video. But specifically, you got to believe in yourself. You have to believe in who you can become. You got to believe in your potential. And one thing I post on my LinkedIn is I say I'm a believer in human potential, because I believe that any person can do good. Any person can be successful. It doesn't matter where you've come from. I came from nothing in my life, and I'll share a little bit about that. My parents, phenomenal people. I always had the things that I needed. I never felt like I didn't have food or anything like that, but we struggled. I grew up in a mobile home, right? I didn't come from any kind of money at all. And it wasn't because, my parents were bad people or they were doing things that they shouldn't have been doing. It's just the circumstances. Like, they didn't come from money, and they didn't necessarily know how to build wealth early on in their life. And so I grew up in a mobile home, and there were times where literally to have a hot shower, I would have to boil water on the stove and take it into the shower and mix hot water with a cup in the shower so I could pour it on me and have warm while the water is just pouring cold. Plenty of things like that. I'm not here to bore you with my history, but I'm showing you that it doesn't matter where you've come from, right? There's people that have had way worse scenarios than that are way more successful than me. But ultimately, it's what you become from the things that you've gone through that actually propels you into either success or failure. And so what I want you to think about today, and what I want you to first off start by thinking is, where have I been? What are some of the things that maybe I use as hangups for myself? And then moving forward, how can I actually use those to propel me, almost like a slingshot, right? How can that propel me into the person that I want to become? And when you start thinking about what you can become, you stop focusing on what you're not, and instead start focusing on what you will be, right? There's a big difference in what you have been and what you will be. And truly having belief in yourself is focusing more on what you will be rather than what you have been. So I think our minds, they play this dangerous game with us where they want you to stay trapped in the things that you've done, the mistakes you've made, the issues that you've had, the way that people have hurt you, right? It's this victim mentality. But the people that are truly successful, not just in business, but in relationships, all that kind of stuff, they focus on their potential, what they will be, what they are becoming, right? It's the transformation that's constantly happening. And when you're transforming into something, you're not moved by things that are already behind you because you're not even looking behind you. You're only looking forward. And so there's something that's so powerful about building a belief in yourself. Now, I'll ask you right now, do you fully believe in yourself? Do you believe that you are worthy of building a 7-figure business? Do you believe that you have the skills necessary to do it? Or do you believe that you're not worthy of it? Do you believe that you don't have the skills, or you can't get the skills, or you will never be enough, or you have never been enough, or maybe somebody told you that you were never enough, that you were never enough, and so you've actually believed that lie, right? Sometimes getting past a lie is as easy as just saying, that's a lie. Sometimes we can formulate this prison in our minds to actually believe that something is way more of an issue than it actually is. And I'm not saying that sometimes issues aren't real, but what I'm saying is our minds can sometimes be a not very kind place to us, right? They want to often hang on the negative. And what I heard this yesterday, and it was talking about, there was a specific book, and it was talking about you've got to be a definite optimist. And I think it was Jim Collins in the book Good to Great. I was reading a little synopsis over that book. I'm actually just going through it again. And he has this whole quadrant. I'm not going to get into the whole quadrant right now, but one of the things was definite and optimist, right? And the people that are successful in business, for the most part, almost exclusively, are definitive optimists. They always believe with finiteness that they will achieve the things that they believe that they can. Now, where does that stem from? It stems from belief. It stems from understanding that they internally are what they need to be, right? They have the thing, they have the it factor, they are destined for greatness, all that kind of stuff. And I'm rah-rahing you right now because sometimes you need a little shake and you need to be rah-rahed a little bit. You need to have somebody that's actually encouraging you to become what you can, to become what you were made to become. And ultimately, I know for myself, when I shifted that mentality internally in my internal world, right? Not what people tell me, right? I love words of affirmation. If you've ever done the 5 love languages, I love when people tell me the things that I'm doing that are great. But I don't want to be driven by that, because that means that as soon as someone tells me that I'm doing something bad or that I'm bad, suddenly that affects where I'm going, right? And so I have to maintain this internal fortitude to be able to say, hey, I know where I'm going, I know who I am, and I know what I'm called to become. And so when you can do that, suddenly that belief starts to build, and suddenly you start to see momentum building around you, and you start to realize, like, well, hey, something's happening here. And so often people attribute that as like luck or other things that are more random, when ultimately a lot of that luck that's actually being created isn't luck at all. It's the culmination of the time that you've put into believing in yourself enough to start to actually move in a direction. I say you can look at a top or something that's spinning on a table, and eventually it's going to build up momentum and it's going to go a direction. If you spin that top and you spin it away from you, it's going to spin and it's going to spin away from you. If you spin it towards you, it's going to spin and it's going to spin towards you. You are the one that's spinning your trajectory in your life. So are you spinning it away from you? Are you spinning it towards you? Are you spinning it toward the thing that you want to be achieving? Or are you spinning it off the table? If you're spinning it off the table, you're going to fall off the table and you're going to feel like you just crashed and burned. If you spin it to where you're trying to get, there's a higher likelihood that you're actually going to take steps forward to move toward your goal. So what does all this have to do with building a 7-figure business? You might be asking that right now. And I'll say this: it has everything to do with building a 7-figure business. It has everything to do with it, because if you don't actually believe that you're worthy of the things that you're pursuing, it doesn't matter how great your product is. It doesn't matter how great your service is. And we're going to talk about believing in those things in the next video tomorrow. But it doesn't matter, right, about any of those other variables. It doesn't matter how good of a manager you are. It doesn't matter how good you are at hiring people. It doesn't matter how good you are at cash forecasting. It doesn't matter how good you are at establishing a system or integrating a CRM or any of the other things that you could possibly need to do to build a seven-figure business. But ultimately, if you don't believe in yourself, you will always be your own enemy, right? For lack of better words, you're always going to be your own speed bump in the road. It's just, there's not any way to get around that. You got to believe in who you are. You have to increase your internal world so that you can actually externally be the person that you need to be to grow and scale at the level that you are desiring to grow and scale to. And so ultimately, how do we work on building that belief, right? So I've shared a lot of concept there. How do we work on that practically? Okay, I think ultimately it's very dependent on who you are, right? There's a lot of different ways that people can do that. I know for myself, I like to write down goals. That's a big thing. And we're going to talk more in another video about goal setting and all of that. But write down your goals, write down your vision, write down who you can be. And I just encourage you, like, ask yourself, look, stand in the mirror, make it feel uncomfortable for yourself and say, you have greatness within you. You are worthy of success. You are a great man or a great woman. You are a great spouse. You are a great parent. You are a great son or daughter, right? Speak those things over yourself, and eventually they become your internal beliefs. You got to just do that. I know it sounds a little bit cheesy. I know you probably feel like, if I do that, I'm going to look like an idiot if my wife or my husband walks in and they see me standing at the mirror just like talking to myself. I'm not saying you need to go, overboard with it, but start to cultivate and curate your internal world so that your external world starts to reflect what you've now established inside. Your internal world is always going to come out in your external manifestations, right? So what's happening inside is always going to eventually come out. So let's work on that. Let's work on getting what's inside. And I'm talking about what you're speaking to yourself inside. I'm not talking about what someone is telling you or how you need to have that affirmed by someone else. I'm saying you have to take the initiative and look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am this. I am this person. I have this skill. I am becoming this. I am going to this place. And you have to start to believe it. And if you can start to believe it, then you'll start to see it over time. And ultimately, if you start to see it over time, then the little hurdles, the little speed bumps, the little things, the bumps in the road that you've been encountering are suddenly going to be way less of issues, because you know where you're going. You know who you are. You know what you're capable of. And if you can do that, and if you can stay the course, and if you can really root that belief down deep within yourself, I have no doubt in my mind that if you can build the intangible, or not the intangible, but the tangible, practical skills that we're going to talk about over the coming, rest of the 20, however many days, you will be able to scale your business to $1 million or more in revenue annually. I've got no doubt about that. But it starts with you. It starts with the belief. It starts with really start trusting yourself, right? Trusting who you are, trusting who you're becoming. Not trusting who you were at some point in time. That's why one of my biggest pet peeves when I'm talking with somebody, or if I'm consulting, or if I'm talking with somebody internally on the team, is like, well, that always used to happen. It's like, well, it might have always used to happen that way, but where are we going to take it now? Because today is a new day, right? The mercy is new today. So let's take a step today the way that we want to go, and stop looking at the things that used to go wrong if we're trusting that we're moving in the right direction to change them. And so I just want to encourage you, as you think tonight, today, about how to take this concept further. I want you to just spend some time reflect and think about, how can I actually improve and enhance my internal world, my internal belief system in myself, and actually build the mindsets I need to build that 7-figure business. So we'll see you in the next one.